Welcome back to the Back End Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Vilches, and today's segment is the Purple Pill, where we talk about everything that's going on in the world, just some world politics, stuff that maybe you weren't aware of and that we were able to cover here, because I like to keep you guys informed. Once again, I will reiterate that I would highly recommend you guys do your own research. I might be able to give you some information that you probably haven't even heard about, because I like to cover things that maybe has been under the radar or stuff like that, and be able to hit some key notes that will allow you to have some idea what's going on around the world. But I will always recommend you do your own research. But when you do your own research, please don't use one social media or one news outlet, because it's really important for you to get multiple perspectives of what's going on, to have the full picture, because you don't want to be biased in something, but to come to your own conclusion. So that's why it's super important to do your own research when it comes to stuff like this. If you're new to listening to this, the reason why we call it the Purple Pill is because I like to have the combination of trying to view things from both sides. Of course, I am biased on some opinions, and I will admit to that, but I will say that it's important for me and for you to always have a perspective that is coming in from the outside and being able to see what both sides. The reason why it's called Purple Pill is a combination of red and blue, which makes purple, right? Haha, it's really funny. But I enjoy it because I like to be able to talk about this stuff and be able to give you some information. Once again, do your own research. So, starting off, we're going to start in America first. We're not going to be talking about Elon Musk or Twitter and everything like that. I feel like it's gotten enough news coverage as of late. But prayers to all the families out there. Please pray for everybody as they are being hit with this cold front that's coming in. It is massive. We're hitting record lows, especially here in Texas. We've gotten some nasty cold, not to an insane level as some other states, but prayers to those that everyone stays safe. The other thing that we're going to talk about here in America is actually Title 42. Title 42 is coming to an end. Now, a lot of you might be like, Adam, what the heck is Title 42? And let me just tell you what Title 42 is. It is, in summary, it is basically a statute that gives a legal right to our commanding officer, so Biden at the current moment, to shut down the border, and allows them to deport or reject migrants simply because of diseases. And this was because of the COVID outbreak. The Title 42 was initiated under Donald Trump, which allowed him to close down the border and prevent people from coming in because of diseases. So this would be used for any other diseases and everything like that. But now it looks like it's coming to an end. Ben Zelsfalt for the Daily Wire wrote this: the statute, which gives commander-in-chief an order power to shut down immigration as an emergency action to keep communicable diseases out of the United States, was last used by former President Donald Trump in a reaction to COVID outbreak. Families seeking asylum had filed a lawsuit which led to Judge Emmett Sullivan of the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. to order the Biden administration to lift Title 42 by Wednesday. So that's basically what's going on right now. So we have Title 42 now it's being lifted. Customs and Border Protection officials actually warned lawmakers that approximately 50,000 foreigners were waiting to cross the United States once Title 42 was ended. So a lot of people heard in southern countries that they were like, oh, Title 40 is going to be lifted, therefore we can go in. So around 50,000 people are just chilling at the border, just waiting for that to happen. Greg Abbott, the governor for Texas, released a statement saying Texas and other states are insisting that the court leaves Title 42 in place. Today's order is a step in that direction. This helps prevent illegal immigration. So because of that, basically what he's trying to say is that they're trying to keep it in place because imagine you just left that. Now all these people are coming in and there's not enough way to properly execute a way to properly get them into our state in an orderly fashion because of how many people are just chilling there. For example, Oscar Leeser, the Democratic mayor of El Paso, declared a state of emergency on Saturday in anticipation of the end of Title 42. Our asylum seekers are not safe, the official said to the press conference. We have hundreds and hundreds on the street. That's not the way we treat our people. More than 80,000 migrants have entered El Paso in the last 4 months. Approximately 678,000 people currently reside in the city, where temperatures can drop below freezing during the winter lights. So because of the cold that's coming in and people are just chilling, lifting it feels like it will just have an overwhelming influx of people coming into our state. So the reason why a lot of people are upset about that is because, so it's a double-edged sword. So let's look at it like this. On one side, people are saying we don't need to have this statute anymore because COVID's ended, open up the borders. Valid. On the other side, we have people saying don't lift it because we aren't capable of having people coming in. It's too many people. Because even Lesser from the Democratic mayor of El Paso even said that they're trying to get nearby military bases to temporarily house these migrants, adding that officials were discussing options with state and federal level. So we're trying to get these people across the border, but lifting it will just have such a big influx because of everyone's like, oh, now we can get in, but it's just too many people. We can't handle it. It's causing a lot of issues, especially for our border patrol and everything like that, which causes people saying, hey, pay attention. And what happens is a lot of DeSantis and Greg Abbott has shipped a lot of these migrants to asylum states, which caused these asylum states to be like, why are you shipping them here? And we're not prepared, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, doesn't matter. But if you are declared an asylum state, you should always be prepared to take in these migrants. That's what you are. Don't say that you're an asylum state if you're not prepared. Don't do it because it's a political gain. It's we are an asylum state, so vote for me. No, if you have the capacity to be able to house these people, because right now Texas, we do not have the capacity to do so, and it's becoming a problem. And once this title has been lifted, that's going to pose an even bigger issue, especially for our state, because we can't house all these people, and especially with the cold influx, the cold air is coming down. Cold front coming down and endangering a lot of these people, that poses even bigger problem. Now, some people might be like, well, Adam, why do you care? It's okay, I'm Hispanic. I'm from Peru. And yes, my mom's American, and yes, my dad's Peruvian, and I was born and raised in Peru. So I understand the immigration process. It is very tedious. I've been through customs. I've been through the whole immigration process. I've witnessed my dad having to get to go through that. Immigration sucks. Okay, immigration sucks not just in America. It sucks everywhere. Okay, trying to get everything renewed for my stuff when I'm in Peru is the biggest pain in my butt ever. Trying to get into the country, getting out of the country is also really difficult. So I get it. I absolutely understand. Now, a lot of people might be voicing their issues over our immigration policy and stuff like that because they're like, well, we can't have all these people coming in. And I actually completely agree. There is a process, and everyone's like, well, the process is too slow. But there's a reason why there is a process like that. And honestly, going through the right channels is the best way to handle these situations, so we can be able to get you in properly, everything like that. So a lot of people well, we want to be a country that accepts a lot of people and have our open arms. I agree. I think it's important for us to have that sense of having the want to be able to help other people and allow people come in and to help those people. But it's really hard to help a lot of people if they're going in a proper way. And a lot of people well, Adam, what's the issue? It's when you go in an improper way, it causes controversies because people start to make laws and issues of well, if you're coming in the wrong way, well, we're gonna have to find a way to justify it, so we don't have to send everybody back, including one of the policies was, if you come across the border and you have a child with you, then you're in the clear. But that causes coyotes. Coyotes are people who take children from their families and basically sex trafficking. It's a human trafficking ring. And a lot of people are well, that's just it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't matter. Do you want it to happen once? I'd rather happen it not at all. So that poses even a bigger issue. So, like, I understand why a lot of people are like, well, we gotta have open borders and have all these people come in, yada yada. Like, sure, why not? If it helps grow our economy, but it's not, like, because, anyways, we could go down this huge rabbit hole. My biggest thing is this: there is a right way and there's a wrong way, and I feel like logically we need to look at it on both perspectives of the sense of, like, how do you go about this? Okay, should we have an open system of allowing people to come in and welcoming them? Yes. Should they go in the proper way? Absolutely. Should the people who come in illegally be sent back to their countries? Yes. They broke the law. Logically, that makes sense. If I steal from a store, I'm going to be arrested. If I speed, which I do, and I get a speeding ticket, I can't complain because I broke the law. You know, it's everyone's like, well, they're trying to justify it by saying, well, it's a human rights, like, a violation. No, it's not, because we still have a process for people to come in and be able to, like, be in our wonderful country. Like, come on, guys. Like, this is not rocket science. It's like, if someone breaks the law, they should be punished for that. And so that's one thing I also, like, I try to understand the perspective of people who are against that. It's like, but I have a hard time doing so, because it's like, law is law, right? Why are we kind of justify the law for somebody else because they're having a hard time? If they're having such a hard time, why not come just through the legal way, right? And people will be like, well, Adam, you don't understand. I do understand. I lived in those countries. Like, I understand the volatility. I understand the issues that are within those countries. I understand the politics of those countries, and I understand why everyone is fleeing. I get it, and I understand. But I'm just saying, for the sake of everybody, it would be easier if they just went through the legal way. People are like, but it takes months to, okay, then help us improve the processing. Find a way to improve the processing to get these people through. And so, yes, I think lifting, in my personal opinion, I think lifting Title 42 is a really bad decision. Do I think it should stay in place? No, but I don't think it should be lifted right now, because that's just going to cause issues. I feel like there should be a progressed way of a solution to lift this statute in a way that is more prepared for the states, because lifting it just immediately right now is just going to cause a big turnout. It's going to cause major issues in the future. So something for you guys to think about, because I think as Christians we should be able to, like, welcome people into our homes and, like, help people with those issues, people who are struggling and everything like that. But, like, still, there is a legal way to do that, because law is law. All right, guys, moving on. So let's actually get into South American news. So some people who, I did talk about this in a previous podcast about everything that's happening in Peru. Just a little update what's happening down there. Basically, a lot of people were arrested. 3 police generals who were aiding in our former president, President Castillo, Pedro Castillo. They have been arrested because of corruption charges and everything like that. It's kind of getting insane. On other news, in South America, Brazil is actually going through it right now, and there was a bomb threat. They had to basically get that all situated out, and everyone's like, you might be like thinking, wait, Adam, what's going on? Well, let me just tell you. Okay, so this is not just Brazil. This is just South America as a whole. And actually, this is like every country. We have the big issue of left versus right. But in South America, it's a little bit different. Left versus right is kind of in an extreme sense. It's just like, in the left, basically it's communism. And then the right is almost, it's military power. It's pretty heavy stuff. So what happened was, there was an election in Brazil, and the person that was more left-leaning was elected, and the former president, Jair Bolsonaro, he was not, like, he wasn't elected. He was more right-leaning. And what happens is this has caused a lot of people in Brazil to be like, no, absolutely not. We do not want to go to communism, because what happened in Venezuela, right? It's like a pandemic of communism that's kind of spreading out. I understand people who support communism. It sounds like a great idea. It just has never worked, guys. BBC News actually wrote about this, saying outside the military barracks in the center of Sao Paulo, there's a small group of about 50 people protesting. Draped in Brazil's flag, they are chanting "Armed Forces Save Brazil," some waving banners with words "Our flag will never be read out with communism." So around them, dozens of tents have been set up because of the green, blue, and yellow colors of the national flag, which are now associated with the country's far right. They have pitched up after October's presidential election, which was the far right candidate. He was back. They were backing incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro, who lost to the left-winger Luis Inácio Lula da Silva. One person, Rodrigo, one of the protesters, Rodrigo, he says it's a greater cause, explaining that he's here to stay and not considering returning home. When asked whether Jair Bolsonaro is the driving force behind his decision to stay in protest, he admitted he is. He's influential on social networks. This thing he posts about family, God, liberty, which are our principles, make us stay here. But fellow protester Lucia Louveira disagrees. He says their movement is bigger than soon-to-be former leader. Our voting system is a fraud, says Luca. He claims Brazil's electronic voting system is prone to irregularities and that our biased Supreme Court is doing nothing about it. It's a familiar argument. Jair Bolsonaro made it throughout the election campaign, providing no proof to back it up. But repeat the allegations over and over again. That's enough to keep this group and people in the streets. We are calling for something different, Luca said, without defining what exactly that is. The truth is, people here want military to get involved. I come here mainly because we have a reason to believe that the elections were not done in a clean manner, explains 22-year-old Sofia, a law student who did not want to give her surname. So basically what's happening right now is a lot of people in Brazil are upset. It's the same issue we face here in America. It's like, they are the elections fraud. These electronic systems and everything like that, people are really upset because they don't want this to happen. And I actually agree, especially with those people in Brazil. It's like, how can you justify the things that are happening, especially when you're... I will say this. South American left-leaning is a bit different from South American left-leaning. Now, some people might argue with me on that, but like in South America, it's way more apparent with the communism, and I agree that like that needs to stop because it causes a lot of issues for a lot of people out there. I understand the perspective; it just has never worked. It damages a lot of people. I don't think military-backed support is smart. So I will disagree with that. I think military can cause either a dictatorship or a regime that you do not want to have. You don't want to have a military occupation. That is always a bad thing. That's the issue with like left-leaning and right-leaning. Right-leaning is a little bit more extreme in the sense of fascism and everything like that, and that could cause issues. So that's why I hate both extremes. It's like people are like, well, if you're on the right, like you're right. It's like, no, because I don't want to be too far right because that causes issues of fascism and everything like that, and I also don't want to be too left-leaning because that causes socialism and communism. This is also not good. So pray for South America as we are facing a communistic epidemic that could cause a lot of issues in our country. Just to go over a quick rundown what's happening in Europe. Not a lot's happening in Europe, just prayers for the Ukrainian war as that's continuing on, and moving on to Africa. Not major issues are happening in Africa. There was a coup in Gambia, but that was put to a stop. What's happening in Asia? Taiwan is preparing for more invasion from China. They're extending their military service as China dials up their pressure. The other thing that's happening in Asia is North Korea is sending out drones they're trying to shoot them down, South Korea is, but they failed to do so. So North Korea is kind of getting a little bit more confidence with that. So that's what's happening in Asia. And then our final segment of this podcast is actually going to do with Israel versus Palestine. Now, this is a key issue, and I didn't know I was going to be talking about this now. I eventually felt like I was going to talk about this in the future, but so just to give you guys an idea of what's going on. So an election happened. It's their 5th election in less than 4 years. So something that's happened in Peru is like we've had a lot of elections. So something as similar to Israel. So my heart goes out there. However, before we get into that, we need to actually break it down. What the heck is happening in Israel? So we want to be able to hit every key point and give you a good summary of what's going on, because Israel versus Palestine has been going on for years. And so we're actually going to start in 2017. All right, 2017 February. Parliament passes a law which retroactively legalizes dozens of Jewish settlements built on private Palestinian land in the West Bank. 2017 June, work begins on the first new Jewish settlement in the West Bank for 25 years. So this is the start of the key issue right here, is people being able to build on these lands. Okay, so moving on. December 2017, U.S. President Donald Trump recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, upsetting the Arab world and Western allies. The following March, he recognizes Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which Israel seized from Syria in the 1967 war and later annexed. The international community does not recognize Israel's sovereignty. In 2018, July through November, UN and Egypt attempt broker a long-term ceasefire between Israel and Hamas amid upsurge in violence on the Gaza border from March. 2019 April through 2020 March, 3 sets of parliamentary elections pit Mr. Netanyahu against a centralist alliance led by former Armed Forces Chief of Staff Benny Gantz, but do not produce a clear majority. In 2019 November, U.S. says it no longer considers Israel's settlements on the West Banks to be illegal. The Prime Minister Netanyahu is charged with bribery, fraud, and breach of trust in the connection with the 3 separate cases. In 2020 April, Netanyahu and Benny Gantz agreed to form a national unity government to deal with COVID-19 pandemic. 2020 August, the United Arab Emirates become the first Gulf state to establish diplomatic relations with Israel. 2021 May, unrest over forced evictions of Palestinians in East Jerusalem leads to conflict with Hamas and communal violence in Israel's cities. And in 2021 June, Naftali Bennett, a Jewish nationalist Amina party, forms a broad coalition to oust Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, let's get into this and break it down. So what happened was it became legal for the Jewish settlements to form basically over private Palestinian land. And then later on, now people are being evicted. Now, why did this happen? Why did the eviction start happening? All right, so let's break it down. Number one, many people lost their homes during the Arab-Israel War of 1948. In 1956, Jordan and UNRWA, a UN agency that supports the relief of Palestinian refugees, resettled 28 Palestinian refugees' families in Sheikh Jarrah. These families had lost their homes during the Arab-Israeli War of 1948. Jewish families living in Sheikh Jarrah also fled during the war and received alternative property for the Israeli government in the form of homes formerly owned by Palestinians. Number two, Jewish families can reclaim property Palestinians cannot. After Israel annexed East Jerusalem in 1967, it passed the 1970 Legal and Administrative Matters Law, allowing Jewish families to reclaim their lost property allegedly owned in East Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the 1950 Absentee Property Law and its amendment in 1973 prevents Palestinians from getting back their property in West Jerusalem and elsewhere. So, in summary of what happened was there, it was basically it allowed Jewish people to reclaim property, but it made sure that Palestinians did not. And number 3, East Jerusalem remains occupied territory under international law. In June 1967, Israel annexed East Jerusalem into its territory in a contravention of principles of international humanitarian law and international law. Today, East Jerusalem remains an occupied territory under international law. Any measures aimed at altering the status of the city has no validity according to the UN Security Council Resolution 252. So, this is where a lot of Palestinians live, so it's under occupation. That's what they say that it is. It's not part, it's kind of its own thing, but it's under occupation. Number 4, new Israeli settlements are planned in Sheikh Jarrah. Nahalal Shimon International, a private settler company registered in the United States, have been driving eviction lawsuits against families in Kamar al-Juhani of Sheikh Jarrah since 2008. Nahalal Shimon had submitted plans to build a new settlement with 200 housing units in the area. So, number 5, more than 200 Palestinians face an eviction threat. According to the UN, some of 218 Palestinian households across Jerusalem have an eviction case against them. Most of these were initiated by settler organizations. Some 970 people, including 424 children, are at risk of displacement. So you're starting to see how it's kind of shifting into this. So they basically built a lot of Israeli settlements, and now they're threatening to evict a lot of Palestinians in their housing, claiming that it's their land. Number 6, Israel has expropriated 35% of Israelism for Israeli settlements. Over 20% of all demolition, evictions, confiscations, or seizures of Palestinian properties in 2020 took place in East Jerusalem. In many cases, the forced eviction of Palestinians occur within the context of Israel's settlement construction and expansion. So a lot of the evictions saying, well, we're expanding our settlement, so you need to get out. Number 7, there have been tensions and clashes between Palestinian and Israelite settlers. The families in Sheikh Jarrah have led largely peaceful protests against the impending evictions. Unfortunately, the clashes have erupted between Palestinian and Israeli settlers from time to time, with the Israeli police employing heavy hand to disperse Palestinian crowds. Number 8, Israel's Supreme Court delayed the evictions, but that could end. Amid rising tensions and clashes between Israeli police and Palestinians in East Jerusalem, Israel's Supreme Court postponed hearings on the eviction of 4 families, Jehun, Kurz, Qasim, and Scuffy, to try to get to the two sides to agree to a deal of its own making. The proposal has been turned down. Number 9, Palestinian families once again face the threat of eviction. Following the rejection of a deal that could have offered only temporary protection, the Palestinian families from Jerusalem's Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood once again face a looming threat of forcible eviction. Number 10, Israel has an obligation to protect occupied civilians. Israel, as a state party of the 4th Geneva Conventions, has an obligation to protect occupied civilians and refrain from transferring populations in and out of occupied territory. Okay, so, Adam, can you give me what you just said in a little bit more of a nugget form? Israel wants to expand its territory over Palestinian private locations. That gets approved. They start taking land and start building settlements there. Okay? Point 2, because of that, they are actually evicting some people from their households because they say, we're trying to expand our Jewish settlements, but you're part of that land, so we need to get you out of there. So they try to overrule that, blah blah blah, and they can't. So now they're facing the looming threat of being evicted once again, and people are like, okay. But the biggest issue is the fact that because Israel is occupying them, they are obligated to protect the civilians. But that's not happening. So now you're starting to see the big issue. So what does this have to do with the election? Well, that's a whole other timeline, and so let's get into it. October 30th this year, Israelis go to the polls on November 1st for their fifth election in less than 4 years. The country has been caught in an election cycle since 2019, amid persistent deadlock between former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rivals on the left, right, and center. Okay, just to give you a quick recap of how the elections work in Israel. There are like 6 parties, coalitions. And if you want to get elected, you have to form like an alliance with a lot of these coalitions, which is pretty difficult to do. So let's start from the beginning. December 2018, Netanyahu, a veteran leader of the right-wing Likud party, seemed to be at the peak of his powers, about to become Israel's longest-serving prime minister, but he had a precarious one-seat majority in parliament in a called a snap election. A snap election is basically a temporary election that kind of happened pretty rapidly. April 9th, 2019, election day, after which Netanyahu, under criminal investigation for corruption, struggles for weeks to put together a coalition and fails. So he tries to put on that coalition, but he fails to do so. Then rather than let his then principal rival, former armed forces chief Benny Gantz, have a chance to form a government, Netanyahu triggered another election in an unprecedented political move which plunged Israel into a political chaos. So 2019, Netanyahu, instead of being like, all right, I'm just going to give up power, says, no, I'm going to make sure that we have another election. September 17th, 2019, a second election, Netanyahu's Likud and Gantz's centralist blue and white party in a virtual tie. What? Yep, that's right, a tie. And for weeks, neither man succeeded in putting together a government, resulting in a third election. So because no coalition could decide which one to choose, they're like, all right, we're going to have another election. And November 21st, 2019, Netanyahu's is indicted for bribery, fraud, and a breach of trust in the 3 cases in which he's alleged to have granted favors to media moguls in return for positive coverage and a illegal receipt of gifts. Netanyahu denies all wrongdoing and claims he is the victim of political witch hunt. So people are like, you are doing all these bad things. And he's like, no, I'm not. March 2nd, 2020. Held under the shadow of newly arrived coronavirus, Israelis goes to the polls once more, but the deadlock persists. Within weeks, Gantz agrees to join an emergency unity government with Netanyahu, with all that will navigate through the economic and health crisis brought on by the pandemic. As Netanyahu's corruption trial kicks off before the year is out, the unity government is already faltering over a budget dispute after Netanyahu's backtracked on his power-sharing deal with Gantz, and a fourth election is called. Man. March 23rd, 2021, the fourth election. After weeks of negotiations and an 11-day war between Israel and Palestinian militias in Gaza, Netanyahu fails to put a government together, and his centrist rival Yair Lapid gets the chance to try and succeeds. Bam. So finally, in June 2nd, 2021, Lapid announces he has managed to put a government together. His unlikely and fragile coalition of the rightist, liberal, and Arab parties is sworn in less than 2 weeks later, putting an end to 12 consecutive years of Netanyahu rule. I'm probably butchering that name. I'm so sorry. But so basically, this prime minister that's been causing all these issues has been running for 12 years. So now it's finally coming into it. Now in June 2022, less than 1 year in its rule, Lapid's coalition loses its razor-thin majority to defections. Rather than wait for the opposition to vote them out, the government moves to dissolve parliament, triggering Israel's 5th election since 2019. So they barely won. And because of their barely win, they couldn't maintain power. Now the government has dissolved the parliament, making them happen to do it again. Now it's election day. After official results are in, usually a matter of days, the president holds consultations with the parties and picks the candidate he sees as having the best chance to form a government. No single party has ever won a majority in the 120-seat parliament, which makes coalition governments the norm. Whoever is picked, the long coalitions will likely ensue, either delivering a government a 6th election. So that's pretty insane, right? So why are we talking about this? And why is this connected? with the election and everything like that that's going on. It is causing a lot of issues within, especially the younger generation in Israel, and it's causing big conflict. So right now, what's happening is, as Israel goes into its fifth election, there's a sharp rise in right-wing support among young Israelis, raise questions about the prospect of a peaceful future. So that's the big issue. So because now a lot of the Palestinians are being evicted and everything like that that's going on, and there's a lot of nervous energy around that, Israelis are becoming a lot more right-wing. A recent analysis by the Israel Democracy Institute, based on numerous surveys conducted this year, shows that about 60% of Jewish Israelis identify as a right-wing today. This is all reported by Vice News, by the way. But among young people at age 18 to 24, that number rises to 70%. In April 2019, only 46% of Jewish Israelis identified as a right-wing across all age groups. Sarah Gohonomim, a 27-year-old content developer from Jerusalem, says there is no real left in Israel. The most left-wing party in Israel would be considered a center-right or a right-wing party in Europe. The surge of right-wing support among Israelis didn't happen in a vacuum. Reactions to last year's violence in Gaza, religious families' tendency to vote conservatively and have more children, deepening the polarization between Israelis and Palestinians are also a contributing factor. 27-year-old Daniel Goodman says that the term right-wing means something specific in Israel. When we talk about the right-wing views, we're mainly talking about security. Most young Israelis are very left-wing in terms of social issues like gay rights and women's rights. But when it comes to security, we need a strong leader like Bibi, which is Netanyahu, to keep us safe. So people in Israel So what is the big issue that's happening in Israel? It's not the social issues, it's security issues. It's Palestine versus Israel right now. So the people in Israel's side say we need the guy Netanyahu, who has been our prime minister for 12 years. He's the person that's going to keep us safe. And to give the perspective of the Palestinians on this, is that the fact that they don't feel safe with this prime minister being elected again, and they're actually rising up and causing their own militia groups because they want to be able to have their command over their own land, and they're becoming creating factions within their community to prevent Israel forces coming in, and because they want to be able to have their own place without any fear of being taken off of it. One person named Abu Majid says the bullet is the new stone. And basically, this is referring to the young Palestinians who pelted the Israeli army with rocks when they raided their neighborhoods. It's a display of the resistance that originated in the first Intifada in 1887, meant to send a message to the occupiers that they are not welcome. What he means is that now, when the army comes into their neighborhoods, they get bullets instead of stone. So that sentence alone is basically a summary of how a lot of especially young Palestinians, feel about the occupation of Israel. They don't feel like they have a say. They feel like they are not being listened to, and they feel like they're about to get all their land taken away from them. And it's causing a lot of these factions to come up. One prominent one is called the Lion's Den. If you want to go research that, they're called the Lion's Den. So now you're kind of seeing of what's going on right now within the community. It's like there seems to be no peace at all within the community, especially between Palestine and Israel, especially in the occupied places. And it feels like it's just going to get worse. Especially if this specific prime minister is elected as prime minister once again after his really long rule, and who knows what's going to happen. And it's just getting more and more dark, and it's getting more and more violent. So prayers to the people of Israel If you guys want me to do a little bit more in-depth research into that, I will, and be able to give you that. But anyways, this concludes our Purple Pill segment of the podcast. Thank you for joining me, guys. All right, guys, let's pray for everybody that's going on. Dear Lord, thank you for giving us this opportunity to come and worship in your name, have fellowship in your name. I pray for all the things that are happening out in the world that's going on, that you will protect everybody, protect the people in Israel. Including the Palestinians. Please protect them from these evictions and the way that we should be handling the situation. Pray for everybody that is being affected by the Title 42. Those immigrants that are coming in, please help them have safe passage into the country, but in a legal way, not in a way that's illegal and that could send them back to their own country. Protection there. And I pray for everything that's happening in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, especially in Ukraine, in South America, my country, in Brazil. I pray that you will help those people and to keep it open, and help us to always be able to see what's going on and be able to talk about it and have the ability to pray for these people. Thank you for all that you've given us, dear Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you guys for joining me for the Purple Pill podcast, the Purple Pill of the segment, and I will see you guys tomorrow on Wednesday. Bye.